Caleb Reed stared at the text message for the third time that morning, his calloused thumb hovering over the delete button. Lakeside Cafe, 2 p.m. Her name's Mara. Don't overthink it. His best friend knew him too well, knew he'd been alone in that cabin for 3 years, knew he'd stopped believing in anything that felt like this. A blind date at 42. He almost laughed, almost deleted it, almost stayed home. But something, maybe loneliness, maybe curiosity, maybe the part of him that still remembered what hope felt like, made him grab his keys. He didn't know it yet, but that single decision would unravel every wall he'd built and prove that sometimes the things we almost ignore become the things we can't live without. Before we dive into Caleb's story, I want to invite you on this journey with me. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy what you hear today, please hit that like button. It truly helps me continue creating these stories for you. Now, let's begin. The morning Caleb Reed received the text message that would change his life, he was 40 feet up a Douglas fir, chainsaw in hand, removing a widowmaker branch that threatened a client's roof. The mountain air was crisp, October sharp, and the view from up there stretched across the valley. Endless pine and aspen, the kind of solitude that had become his religion. His phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. When he finally climbed down and checked, there were 6 messages from Marcus, his oldest friend, each one more insistent than the last. Dude. Saturday, 2 p.m., Lakeside Cafe in town. Her name's Mara. Don't overthink it. I'm serious, Caleb. You owe me for the deck I helped you build. Caleb stood there in the sawdust, reading the messages twice, then a third time. A blind date. Marcus had been threatening this for months, ever since he'd gotten engaged to Sophie and decided everyone else needed to be coupled up too. Caleb had laughed it off every time, made jokes about being perfectly happy with his dog and his tools. But Marcus wasn't joking anymore. Caleb typed back, "I'm good, man. Thanks anyway." The response was immediate. "Sophie already told her you'd be there. Don't make us liars." Caleb exhaled hard, his breath visible in the cold air. He looked around at the empty forest, the truck loaded with equipment, the cabin waiting for him at the end of another long day. The same routine, the same silence. For 3 years now, that silence had felt like safety. After everything with Rachel, after the divorce that had gutted him and left him questioning every choice he'd ever made, silence had been his friend. But lately, that silence had started to feel less like peace and more like absence. He shoved the phone back in his pocket and returned to work, telling himself he'd decide later. But Saturday arrived cold and clear. Caleb woke at dawn out of habit, fed Ranger, his 7-year-old German shepherd, and went through his morning routine. Coffee, shower. He stood in front of his closet longer than usual, which annoyed him. It was just a setup, probably a disaster waiting to happen. Marcus meant well, but the man thought everyone's problems could be solved with the right introduction. Still, Caleb found himself pulling out a clean flannel shirt instead of his usual work clothes, dark jeans instead of the ones with paint stains. He ran a hand through his hair, cut shorter now than it used to be, more gray than brown at the temples. When had that happened? "This is ridiculous," he said to Ranger, who tilted his head in agreement. But at 1:30, Caleb was in his truck, driving the 20 minutes into town, telling himself he could always turn around. He could text Marcus with some excuse. A job came up, truck trouble, anything. The guy would be annoyed, but he'd get over it. Except Caleb kept driving. The Lakeside Cafe sat right on the water, a converted boathouse with wide windows and a deck that stretched over the lake. It was the kind of place tourists loved and locals tolerated, expensive coffee and mediocre sandwiches with a view that made up for everything. Caleb had been there exactly twice in the 8 years he'd lived in the area. He parked and sat in the truck for a full minute, hands on the steering wheel, engine off. Through the windows he could see couples and families, the Saturday afternoon crowd. What was he doing? He was a 42-year-old carpenter who lived alone in the woods. He had no business pretending he was ready for this. His phone buzzed. Marcus. "Sophie just confirmed. Mara's on her way. Don't bail." Caleb closed his eyes, took a breath, opened the door and stepped out before he could change his mind. Inside, the cafe smelled like coffee and cinnamon, warm against the October chill. He scanned the room, having no idea what he was looking for. Marcus had told him almost nothing except her name, and that she was great, seriously, you'll like her, which meant nothing. Marcus thought everyone was great. Caleb ordered coffee he didn't want and took a table by the window, facing the door. Now he was the guy sitting alone, checking his watch, obviously waiting for someone. He felt exposed, foolish. This was a mistake. He should leave. The door opened. Caleb looked up out of instinct, and there she was. He knew immediately, though he couldn't have explained how. She stood in the doorway for just a moment, scanning the room the same way he had, and there was something in her posture, contained, cautious, like she was also questioning why she'd come. She wore a simple gray sweater and jeans, dark hair pulled back, minimal makeup. Not trying too hard. Not trying at all, really. Their eyes met. For a second, neither of them moved. Then she walked toward him, and Caleb stood without thinking about it, his chair scraping loud against the floor. "Caleb?" she asked, her voice quiet but clear. "Mara?" "Yeah." She smiled just a little. "So we're the joke, I guess." That broke something. Caleb laughed, surprised by the sound of it. "I almost didn't come." "Me too." She set her bag down and sat, and he followed suit, suddenly aware of his hands, where to put them. Sophie's been relentless. I finally gave in just to get her to stop talking about it. Marcus used the guilt card, reminded me about a deck. Sophie used our 15-year friendship and the fact that I'm her son's godmother. Caleb smiled despite himself. "They're shameless." "Completely." Mara ordered tea when the waitress came by, then turned back to him. "So, full disclosure, I haven't done this in a long time, like years. I have no idea what I'm supposed to say." The honesty disarmed him. Most people hid behind small talk, pretended to be comfortable when they weren't. "Me neither," he admitted. "I've been actively avoiding it, actually." "Since?" 3 years. Divorce. 5 years. Also divorce. She said it matter-of-factly, no apology or embarrassment. "I have a son, Owen. He's 12. I have a dog, Ranger. He's 7. Mara laughed, and it was genuine, reaching her eyes. "Well, that's settled then. You have lower maintenance dependents." Ranger would disagree. He's very emotionally demanding. As 12-year-olds go, Owen's pretty low drama, though he did inform me this morning that I was cringe for going on a blind date. Smart kid. He has his moments. The tea arrived, and conversation fell into an easy rhythm that surprised them both. Mara was a freelance graphic designer, worked from home mostly, which gave her flexibility with Owen's schedule. She'd been married young, divorced at 32, when her ex-husband decided family life wasn't what he wanted after all. No bitterness in how she said it, just fact. Caleb told her about the carpentry business he'd built from nothing, the cabin he'd restored himself, the life he'd chosen in the woods after his marriage fell apart. He didn't go into details. Rachel was a closed chapter, one he rarely opened, but Mara seemed to understand what he wasn't saying. "Do you like it?" she asked. "The solitude?" Caleb considered that. "I did. I do, mostly. It's uncomplicated." Uncomplicated sounds nice. It is, until it isn't. She met his eyes, and something passed between them, an understanding that didn't need explanation. They'd both chosen safety over risk, both built lives around the idea that alone was better than hurt. They talked for 2 hours without noticing. The cafe filled and emptied around them, afternoon light shifting across the lake, and neither reached for their phone or checked the time. Mara told him about Owen's obsession with astronomy, how they'd driven 2 hours to see a meteor shower last month. Caleb told her about learning carpentry from his grandfather, how the smell of sawdust still reminded him of Saturday mornings as a kid. "Do you miss it?" Mara asked. "Being married, I mean, the partnership part of it?" Caleb turned his coffee cup in slow circles. "Sometimes. Not the marriage itself, that was broken long before it ended. But the idea of it, yeah. Coming home to someone. Sharing the small things." "The small things are what I miss most," Mara said quietly. Having someone to tell about Owen's science fair project, or the weird thing the neighbor said. The big moments, you can call a friend, but the small stuff just disappears if there's no one there to share it with. Yeah, Caleb felt that in his chest, the truth of it. Exactly that. When they finally stood to leave, the sun was starting its descent, the lake turning gold. They walked out together, and the October air felt colder now, sharper. So, Mara said, pulling her jacket tighter, this wasn't terrible. Surprisingly, not terrible, Caleb agreed. They stood by her car, neither quite ready to end it. Caleb's truck was 3 spaces over, but he made no move toward it. Would you? Mara started, then stopped, seeming to reconsider. Would you want to do this again? Maybe just a walk or something, less formal. Relief hit him before he recognized it. Yeah, I'd like that. Tomorrow? There's a trail by the lake, easy loop. Owen's with his dad this weekend. Tomorrow works. They exchanged numbers and Mara smiled, fuller this time, less guarded. Okay then, text me, so I know you're not a serial killer who's really good at pretending to be a carpenter. I'll send you references. Ranger's testimony doesn't count. He's very reliable. She laughed and got in her car, and Caleb watched her pull away, standing there in the parking lot like an idiot, unable to stop smiling. On the drive home, he called Marcus. So? Marcus sounded smug already. It was good. Good? That's it? Come on, man, give me something. We're meeting tomorrow for a walk. Marcus whooped so loud Caleb had to pull the phone away from his ear. I knew it. Sophie's going to lose her mind. She's been planning your wedding since Tuesday. It was one coffee, Marcus. One coffee that led to a second date. Don't pretend this isn't huge. Caleb couldn't argue with that. Thanks, he said, meaning it, for pushing. That's what friends are for. Now go home and tell Ranger he's getting a new mom. Goodbye, Marcus. But he was still smiling when he hung up. The next morning, Caleb woke before sunrise, same as always. But instead of heading straight to work, he spent 20 minutes debating what to wear for a casual walk. This was absurd. He was a grown man who'd survived a divorce and built a business from scratch. And here he was worried about whether his jacket made him look like he was trying too hard. He settled on jeans, boots, a simple pullover. Ranger watched with interest. Don't judge me, Caleb told him. Ranger wagged his tail, which Caleb chose to interpret as encouragement. They met at the trailhead at 10. Mara was already there, leaning against her car, and Caleb felt that same pull he'd felt yesterday, recognition, like finding something familiar in unexpected places. Morning, she said. Morning. They started walking without preamble, falling into step like they'd done this 100 times. The trail wound through pine forest, following the lake's edge, dappled sunlight breaking through the canopy. It was the kind of perfect October day that only happened in the mountains, crisp air, blue sky, leaves turning gold and red. I told Owen I met someone, Mara said after a few minutes. He asked if you were nice. What did you say? That it was too early to tell, but you seemed okay. Harsh. He said, and I quote, cool, just don't get weird about it. Caleb laughed. Smart kid. He's protective. It's been just us for a long time. That makes sense. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, and Caleb found himself studying her in quick glances, the way she moved, easy and unhurried, the way she'd stop occasionally to look at something, a mushroom cluster or interesting rock, not feeling the need to fill every moment with words. Can I ask you something? Mara said eventually. Sure. Why did you almost not come yesterday? Caleb considered how much to say. Honestly, I didn't think I was ready. Thought it would be easier to just not try. But you came anyway. Last-minute decision. Literally sat in my truck debating it. I did the same thing, Mara admitted. Pulled into the parking lot, almost left twice. Sophie called and I ignored it because I knew she'd convince me to stay. What changed your mind? She was quiet for a moment, watching the path ahead. I guess I realized I was more scared of staying stuck than I was of being disappointed. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. They reached a clearing where the trail opened up to a view of the whole lake, mountains rising beyond it. They stopped without discussing it, standing side by side, taking it in. I moved here 5 years ago, Mara said, after the divorce. Needed a fresh start, Somewhere Owen and I could just breathe. I'd never lived anywhere this quiet before. Do you like it? I love it, but it's also lonely sometimes. I work from home, Owen's at school, and suddenly it's 5 p.m. and I haven't talked to another adult all day. Caleb knew that feeling intimately. That's why I take jobs that require client meetings. Forces me to interact with humans occasionally. Does it work? Barely. She smiled, then looked at him directly. Can I be honest about something? Please. I wasn't sure I wanted to do this, dating again, I mean. I'd kind of made peace with being alone, but yesterday, talking to you, it reminded me that there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. I'd forgotten that. Caleb felt his chest tighten. I know what you mean. Do you? Want to do this, I mean? The question hung there, simple and terrifying. Caleb could deflect, make a joke, keep it light. Instead, he told the truth. I don't know, but I know I want to find out. Mara nodded slowly. That's fair. That's more than fair. They kept walking, and somehow the honesty made everything easier. They talked about easier things, favorite books, worst jobs they'd ever had, the ridiculous names Mara's ex-husband had wanted to give Owen before she'd vetoed them all. He wanted to name him Maximus, she said, shaking her head. Like the gladiator. I had to put my foot down. Owen's much better. Right? Classic, simple, no one makes fun of it. What did you want to name him? Owen, actually. It was the one thing we agreed on immediately. When they got back to the parking lot 2 hours later, neither was ready to leave. They stood by Mara's car again, that same awkward, comfortable space between them. I had a good time, Mara said. Me too. Would you want to do dinner sometime? Actual dinner, not just coffee or walking? Caleb smiled. Yeah, I'd like that. Friday? There's a place downtown, Italian, nothing fancy. Friday works. Mara got in her car but rolled down the window before starting the engine. Caleb? Yeah? I'm glad you showed up yesterday. To the cafe, I mean. Me too. He watched her drive away, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Anticipation. Not anxiety, not dread. Just simple anticipation for Friday, for seeing her again, for whatever came next. On the drive home, his phone rang. Marcus again. You're worse than a teenager, Caleb said by way of greeting. How'd it go? Good. We're having dinner Friday. Yes. Sophie's going to... Do not tell Sophie yet. Can we just keep this low-key for a minute? Marcus was quiet for a beat. Yeah, man. Of course. But for the record, I'm really happy for you. It's been 2 dates, Marcus. I know, but still. That week, Caleb found himself checking his phone more than usual. Mara texted him Tuesday, a picture of Owen's science project, a model of the solar system made entirely from recycled materials. He's been working on this for 3 weeks. I'm not allowed to help. Caleb smiled and texted back. Impressive. Especially Jupiter. That's a wadded-up grocery bag covered in paint. Still impressive. They texted sporadically throughout the week. Nothing heavy, just small moments. She sent him a photo of a design mock-up she was proud of. He sent her a picture of a table he was building, cherry wood with inlaid maple. That's beautiful, she wrote back. Thanks. It's for a client's dining room. You should be proud. That's real craftsmanship. He stared at that message for a long time. Rachel had never understood why he'd left his corporate job to work with his hands, had seen it as a step down, a failure of ambition. Mara got it in one text message. Friday arrived, and Caleb found himself nervous in a way he hadn't been since he was 17. He changed shirts twice, which Ranger found hilarious. Not a word, Caleb told him. The Italian place Mara had suggested was small and warm, red check tablecloths and candles in wine bottles, the smell of garlic and tomatoes filling the air. Mara was already there when he arrived, and she stood when she saw him smiling. Hi. Hi. They sat, and the nervousness faded almost immediately. Conversation picked up where it had left off, easy and natural. Mara told him about Owen's meteor shower obsession, how he'd started building a telescope from a kit. Caleb told her about the cabin restoration, the mistakes he'd made, the things he'd learned. Do you think you'll stay there long term? Mara asked. In the cabin, I mean. I don't know. I bought it thinking it was temporary, just somewhere to reset. But it's been 3 years and I'm still there. Do you like it? Most days, yeah, it's peaceful. But lately I've been wondering if maybe I've gotten too comfortable with the isolation. Mara nodded. I feel that way sometimes too. Like I've built this life that's safe and manageable, but maybe too small, you know? Yeah. They ordered wine, shared pasta, and talked until the restaurant was nearly empty. When the check came, Caleb reached for it, but Mara stopped him. Split it? She suggested. You sure? Positive. This isn't the 1950s. Caleb smiled. Fair enough. Outside, the night had turned cold, their breath visible in the air. They walked slowly to the parking lot, neither rushing despite the temperature. I should get home, Mara said, but she didn't move toward her car. Owen's with his dad until tomorrow, but I told him I'd call before bed. How's he doing with all this? He's okay. Curious, I think. He asked if you had kids. What did you tell him? The truth. That you have a dog and seem nice. High praise. Mara laughed, then turned to face him fully. This is going to sound strange, but I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like something's going to reveal that this is all, I don't know, too good to be true. Caleb understood that completely. I feel the same way. Do you? Yeah. Every time my phone buzzes, I think it's going to be you canceling, saying you've thought about it and this was a mistake. I wouldn't do that. I know, but the fear's still there. They stood close now, closer than they had been, and Caleb could see the flecks of green in her brown eyes, the way her hair had escaped its clip in the wind. Can I kiss you? He asked quietly. Mara's eyes widened slightly, surprised by the directness. Then she smiled. Yeah, you can. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but she met him halfway. The kiss was soft, tentative, neither pushing for more than the moment offered. When they pulled back, Mara was still smiling. Okay, she said softly. Okay? That was... okay. Good. Okay. Caleb laughed, relieved and happy and terrified all at once. Good okay works for me. They said goodnight, and Caleb drove home with the radio off, just the sound of the truck and his own thoughts, replaying the evening, the kiss, the way she'd looked at him like he was someone worth seeing. At the cabin, Ranger greeted him with enthusiasm, and Caleb sat on the porch, looking out at the dark forest, feeling like something had shifted. Not solved, not fixed, but opened. Like a door he'd nailed shut had cracked just enough to let light through. His phone buzzed. Mara. Thank you for tonight. He typed back, thank you. Same time next week? I'd like that. Caleb sat there a while longer, the cold seeping through his jacket, but he didn't mind. For the first time in 3 years, the silence of the woods didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. Over the next 3 weeks, Caleb and Mara fell into a rhythm that felt both new and familiar, like finding a song you didn't know you'd been waiting to hear. They saw each other twice a week, sometimes 3, always keeping it simple. Dinner at quiet restaurants, walks along trails they were starting to know by heart. One Sunday afternoon at a farmer's market where Mara bought honey and Caleb pretended to understand the difference between heirloom tomatoes. They texted throughout the days, nothing profound, just the small observations Mara had mentioned missing. She sent him photos of design projects, asked his opinion on color palettes, even though they both knew she didn't need his input. He sent her pictures of woodwork in progress, complained about difficult clients in ways that made her laugh. It was easy. That was what surprised them both, how uncomplicated it felt, how little effort it took to simply be together. But there were moments when Caleb caught himself pulling back, old instincts kicking in. When Mara invited him to her house for the first time, he'd said yes immediately, then spent the drive over questioning everything. Meeting Owen felt significant, a line being crossed, and he wasn't sure he was ready for that kind of weight. He pulled up to a modest 2-story house on the edge of town, surrounded by pine trees, a basketball hoop in the driveway. Through the front window, he could see warm light, movement inside. Normal life, family life, everything he'd convinced himself he didn't need anymore. Mara opened the door before he could knock, smiling in that way that made his chest feel tight. Hey, she said. You found it okay? GPS worked miracles. Come in. Warning, Owen's in full interrogation mode. I told him to be cool, which naturally had the opposite effect. Caleb stepped inside to the smell of something cooking, jazz playing quietly from somewhere, a lived-in warmth that his cabin lacked. The walls were covered in framed art, some clearly Owen's childhood drawings, others more sophisticated pieces Mara must have designed. Owen appeared from the kitchen, tall for 12, all elbows and curiosity. He looked at Caleb with the direct assessment only kids could pull off without being rude. "Hi," Owen said. "Hi, you must be Owen." "Yeah, Mom says you build stuff." "I do. Furniture mostly, some carpentry." "Like cabinets and things?" "Exactly like that." Owen nodded, processing. "Cool. We have a shelf in my room that's kind of wobbly. Could you fix it?" "Owen," Mara said, laughing, "we literally just said hello. I'm just asking. It's been wobbly for like 6 months." Caleb smiled. "I could take a look at it, if your mom doesn't mind." Mara shook her head, amused. "See what you started?" Dinner was lasagna, which Owen informed them was from Trader Joe's because his mom couldn't cook to save her life. Mara didn't deny it, just shrugged and said frozen lasagna was underrated. They ate at a round table in the kitchen, and Caleb watched the easy banter between mother and son, the shorthand they'd developed over years of being just the two of them. "So what do you do in the woods?" Owen asked between bites. "Mom said you live in a cabin." "I do. It's quiet mostly. I work there, read, take care of my dog." "What kind of dog?" "German Shepherd. His name's Ranger." Owen's eyes lit up. "That's cool. I want a dog, but Mom says we're not home enough." "I said maybe when you're older," Mara corrected, "when you can handle the responsibility." "I'm responsible." "You forgot to turn in your permission slip for the planetarium trip." "That was one time." Caleb listened to them, feeling something he couldn't quite name. Not envy exactly, but awareness of what he'd missed out on. He and Rachel had talked about kids early on, before the cracks started showing, but it had never happened. Looking back, that was probably for the best. After dinner, Owen challenged Caleb to a game of chess, which surprised them both. The kid was good, thoughtful in his moves, patient in ways Caleb hadn't expected. "My dad taught me," Owen said, capturing one of Caleb's bishops. "Before he left, I mean. We used to play every weekend." Mara, cleaning up in the kitchen, went still for just a moment before continuing. "Do you still see him much?" Caleb asked carefully. "Every other weekend. Sometimes less if he's traveling. He's a sales rep, so he's gone a lot." Owen moved his knight, not looking up from the board. "It's fine, though. Mom and I do okay." "Better than okay," Caleb said. "Your mom's pretty great." Owen glanced toward the kitchen, then back at Caleb. "Yeah, she is." He paused, then added quietly, "She doesn't go out much, like with other people. So this is kind of a big deal." Caleb met the kid's eyes, understanding what wasn't being said. Owen was protective, cautious, making sure Caleb knew what was at stake here. "I get that," Caleb said. "For what it's worth, I don't do this much either. Haven't in a long time." Owen nodded, seeming satisfied with that answer. "Okay, good." He moved his queen. "Checkmate, by the way." Caleb looked at the board and laughed. "You hustled me." "You made it easy." Later, after Owen had gone upstairs to finish homework, Mara and Caleb sat on the back porch with coffee, the November night cold enough to see their breath. The yard was small but well kept, a fire pit in the center surrounded by chairs. "He likes you," Mara said. "Owen, I mean, that's not nothing. He's a good kid, smart. He's protective. Ever since the divorce, he's been watchful. Makes sure I'm okay." "That's a lot for a 12-year-old. "I know. I've tried to keep him from feeling like he has to take care of me, but kids notice everything." She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. "His dad leaving really messed with his sense of security. He doesn't say much about it, but I know he worries that people leave." Caleb understood that fear intimately. "Does he see his dad regularly?" "When Brian's in town, yeah. Which is maybe twice a month now. He means well, but he's never been great at follow-through. Lots of promises, not much delivery. That must be hard. For both of you." Mara was quiet for a moment. "The divorce itself wasn't the hard part. We'd been wrong for each other for years, just too stubborn to admit it. But watching Owen try to make sense of why his dad chose work over him, that's been brutal. Is that what happened? Brian chose work? More or less. He got offered a promotion that meant constant travel, took it without really discussing it with me, and when I said we needed to figure out how to make it work with Owen, he said maybe we were holding him back. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Turns out we meant Owen and me specifically. I'm sorry. Don't be. Honestly, it was a relief when he finally left. The pretending was exhausting. She looked at Caleb. What about you? What happened with your marriage? Caleb had known this question would come eventually. Rachel and I wanted different things. Or maybe we wanted the same things but had different ideas about what they looked like. She wanted success, status, the whole upward mobility thing. I wanted this. He gestured vaguely at the mountains beyond them. Quiet, simple work. She saw it as giving up. And you saw it as finding yourself. Something like that. We fought about it for 2 years before we finally admitted we were making each other miserable. Do you regret it? The marriage, I mean? Caleb considered that. No. I regret how long we dragged it out, how much damage we did trying to force something that was never going to work. But the marriage itself taught me what I didn't want, which is valuable information. What don't you want? Someone who sees my choices as failures. Someone who needs me to be something I'm not. Mara nodded slowly. That makes sense. She set down her coffee. Can I ask you something? Always? What are we doing here? I don't mean that in a bad way. I want to make sure we're on the same page. Caleb had been asking himself the same question. Honestly, I don't know exactly. I like spending time with you. I think about you when we're not together. That's about as far as I've gotten. That's fair. I'm in the same place. She pulled her jacket tighter against the cold. I'm not good at casual, though. I know people do that, date without expectations, but I've never been able to pull it off. If this is going somewhere, I need to know. And if it's not, that's okay too, but I need to know that as well. It was the kind of direct honesty that would have terrified him a month ago. Now it just felt like relief. I want it to go somewhere, Caleb said carefully. I'm not sure where exactly, and I'm definitely out of practice at this, but yeah, I want to see where this goes. Mara smiled, and even in the dark, he could see the tension leave her shoulders. Okay. Good. That's really good. They stayed on the porch until the cold drove them inside, and when Caleb left an hour later, Mara walked him to his truck. They stood in the driveway, close enough to touch, but not quite touching, both aware of Owen's bedroom window above them. Thank you for dinner, Caleb said. Thank you for fixing Owen's shelf. It was just a loose screw. Still, he's been complaining about it for months. She stepped closer. Can I see you this week? I'd like that. Wednesday? I have a deadline Tuesday night, but after that, I'm free. Wednesday works. Mara glanced up at Owen's window, then back at Caleb. He's definitely watching us right now? Probably. So I'm going to hug you goodnight in a completely appropriate, mom-friendly way. Caleb laughed. Sounds perfect. She hugged him, and it was brief but warm, and when she pulled back, she was smiling. Drive safe. You too. I mean, to bed. Sleep safe. Sleep safe? You know what I mean. She laughed and went inside, and Caleb sat in his truck for a moment, watching the house, the warm light in the windows, the life happening inside. He wasn't part of it, not really, not yet, but he wanted to be. That realization should have scared him. Instead, it felt like coming up for air after being underwater too long. Wednesday came, and with it, unseasonable cold. The mountains got their first real snow, and Caleb spent the morning winterizing his cabin, making sure the pipes wouldn't freeze. He was supposed to meet Mara for lunch in town, but she texted him at 11. Change of plans? Owen's school just called early dismissal because of the weather. I need to pick him up. Rain check? Caleb stared at the message, fighting disappointment. It was reasonable, responsible parenting, exactly what she should do. But he'd been looking forward to seeing her, and now he was back to an empty afternoon stretching ahead. He typed, "No problem, stay safe in the snow." Her response came quickly. Unless... Want to come over? We were going to make chili and watch a movie, nothing fancy. Caleb read it twice, surprised by how much he wanted to say yes. This was different from a planned dinner, from the controlled environment of their first meeting. This was real life, casual and domestic and ordinary. Are you sure? I don't want to intrude. You're not intruding. Owen already asked if you were coming. Apparently you're more fun than me. That's a low bar. Rude. But yes, come over. Around 2? Caleb smiled. See you at 2. He arrived to find Owen and Mara in the kitchen, debating chili recipes like it was a matter of national importance. You can't put beans in chili, Owen was saying. That's not real chili. Says who? Mara countered. Says Texas. We're in Colorado. The principal stands. Caleb knocked on the door frame. Did I walk into a war zone? Caleb! Owen turned to him like a judge. Tell her, beans in chili, yes or no? I'm not getting in the middle of this. Coward, Mara said, but she was smiling. They made chili with beans, which Owen protested loudly while eating 2 bowls. Afterward, they settled in the living room for a movie. Owen's choice. Some science fiction thing about time travel that Caleb lost the plot of after 20 minutes. But he didn't mind. He was too aware of Mara beside him on the couch. Owen sprawled in the armchair, the easy comfort of being included in this small, ordinary moment. Halfway through the movie, Owen fell asleep in the chair, mouth open, completely out. He does this every time, Mara whispered. Insists he's not tired, passes out within an hour. Should we wake him? Not yet. Let him sleep. She adjusted the blanket over her lap. This is nice. You being here. Yeah? Yeah, it feels right. Does that make sense? It does. They sat in comfortable silence, the movie playing on, snow falling steadily outside. Caleb felt something settle in his chest, a quiet certainty he hadn't expected. This was what he'd been missing, not grand gestures or passion, just this, presence, comfort, belonging. His phone buzzed. Marcus, of course. How's it going with Mara? Caleb typed back one-handed. Good. Really good. That's what I like to hear. Sophie wants to do couples dinner soon. Let me talk to Mara first. Fair. But don't wait too long. Sophie's getting impatient. Caleb pocketed his phone and turned to Mara. Marcus wants to do a double date. Him and Sophie, us. Mara raised an eyebrow. Are we ready for that? Meeting the friends officially? I don't know. Are we? She thought about it. Maybe? I mean, they set us up. They're going to want to gloat. Extensively. We could do it. Just set some ground rules first. Like what? Like they're not allowed to ask when we're getting married. Caleb laughed. Deal. What else? No embarrassing stories about either of us. That's going to be hard for Marcus. He can suffer. They decided on dinner the following Saturday, somewhere casual where the pressure would be minimal. Mara seemed nervous about it in a way she hadn't been about anything else, and Caleb understood why. Meeting friends was another marker, another step towards something real and defined. The following week brought more snow and a furniture commission that kept Caleb busy, but he and Mara talked every day, sometimes just for a few minutes, other times for over an hour. She told him about a client who kept changing their mind about a logo design. He told her about the cherry wood table he was finishing, how satisfying it was to see something take shape under his hands. You really love it, Mara said during one evening call. The woodworking, I mean. I can hear it in your voice when you talk about it. I do. It's the only thing I've ever been really good at. I doubt that's true. Name something else. You're good at listening, at being present. Those are real skills, Caleb. He didn't know what to say to that. Rachel had accused him of being emotionally unavailable, distant, too caught up in his own head. Mara saw something different. Thank you, he said finally. I'm just stating facts. Saturday arrived cold and clear. Caleb picked Mara up at 7, and they drove to the restaurant together, her nervousness palpable in the truck. It's just Marcus and Sophie, Caleb said. They already like you. They don't know me. They know you set me up and I'm happy. That's enough for them. Marcus and Sophie were already there when they arrived, sitting at a corner booth, and Sophie lit up when she saw them. Finally! She stood to hug Mara, then Caleb. I've been dying to do this officially. It's been 3 weeks, Soph, Marcus said. 3 weeks of wondering and waiting. She sat back down, pulling Mara into the seat beside her. Okay, tell me everything. How's it going? Be honest. Mara glanced at Caleb, who shrugged. It's going well, she said. Really well, actually. I knew it. Didn't I say they'd be perfect? Sophie looked at Marcus triumphantly. You did. Multiple times. Because I was right. The evening unfolded easily after that. Sophie and Marcus were warm, funny, genuinely invested in seeing their friends happy. They told stories about how they'd met, a cooking class disaster where Marcus had somehow set his station on fire, and asked questions that felt curious rather than invasive. So what's the plan? Sophie asked over dessert. Are you guys, official? Sophie, Marcus warned. What? I'm just asking. Mara smiled. I think we're figuring it out as we go. But yeah, we're together. Caleb reached for her hand under the table, and she squeezed back, and something passed between them that felt like confirmation. They were doing this. Actually doing this. Later, in the parking lot, after Sophie had hugged them both goodbye at least 3 times, and Marcus had given Caleb an approving nod, Mara turned to him. That wasn't so bad. Told you. Sophie's intense but sweet. That's Sophie in a nutshell. They stood by his truck, the night cold enough to hurt, neither wanting to leave just yet. Can I tell you something? Mara asked. Always. I'm happy. Genuinely happy. I haven't felt this way in years. Caleb pulled her close, and she came easily, fitting against him like she'd always been meant to be there. Me too. Yeah? Yeah. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other in the cold. And Caleb thought about all the things he'd almost missed, the coffee date he'd almost skipped, the walk he'd almost canceled, this moment, right here, that he'd almost never gotten to have. Come on, he said eventually. Let's get you home before we freeze. The drive back was quiet, comfortable, Mara's hand in his on the console between them. When he pulled up to her house, she didn't immediately get out. Do you want to come in? She asked. Owen's at his dad's tonight. The invitation hung there, weighted with possibility. Caleb knew what she was really asking, what this could mean if he said yes. Are you sure? I'm sure. He followed her inside to the quiet house, and everything felt different without Owen there, more intimate, more theirs. Mara made tea they didn't drink, and they sat on the couch talking about nothing important until the talking stopped and they were just looking at each other, the air between them charged with something they'd been carefully building toward. I don't want to rush this, Caleb said quietly. Neither do I. But I also don't want to pretend I don't want to be close to you. Mara moved closer. Then don't pretend. He kissed her, and it was different from the tentative first kiss in the parking lot. This was certain, intentional, an answer to the question they'd both been asking. When they finally pulled apart, Mara was smiling. Stay, she said softly. Just for a while. So he stayed. They fell asleep on the couch sometime after midnight, tangled together under a throw blanket, the house quiet around them. Caleb woke first as pale winter light filtered through the curtains, disoriented for a moment before remembering where he was. Mara was curled against him, her breathing deep and even, one hand resting on his chest. He stayed still, not wanting to wake her, taking in the unfamiliar intimacy of this moment. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He carefully extracted it, seeing a text from his neighbor about a fallen tree blocking the road to his cabin. Nothing urgent, but it would need attention eventually. He set the phone aside and looked down at Mara, who was starting to stir. Morning, she murmured, eyes still closed. Morning? What time is it? Little after 7. She groaned softly. I fell asleep on you, literally. I didn't mind. Mara opened her eyes, looking up at him with a sleepy smile. This is nice. Waking up with someone. Yeah, it is. They lay there for a few more minutes, neither rushing to move, both aware that this was new territory. Eventually, Mara sat up, running a hand through her hair. Coffee? She offered. Please. They moved to the kitchen, and there was something deeply comfortable about the way they navigated the space together, Mara starting the coffee while Caleb found mugs without asking where they were kept. Morning light filled the room, and through the window the mountains were sharp against a clear sky. Owen comes back this afternoon, Mara said, leaning against the counter. His dad's supposed to drop him off around 3. I should probably head out before then. You don't have to. I mean, Owen knows we're dating, but if you'd rather... It's not that. I just don't want to make things complicated for him. Mara nodded, understanding. I appreciate that. But for what it's worth, I think he'd be fine with you being here. He talks about you sometimes. Asks when you're coming over again. That surprised Caleb. He does? Yeah, I think he likes having another adult around who isn't his dad or one of my friends. Someone who's just there for both of us, you know? Caleb did know. He'd seen how Owen watched them together, assessing but not judging, cautiously optimistic about whatever this was becoming. They had coffee on the back porch, despite the cold, wrapped in jackets, watching birds at the feeder Mara had hung from a pine branch. The conversation drifted to easy topics, plans for the week, the snow that was forecast, a project Mara was pitching to a new client. Can I ask you something? Mara said after a while. Sure. Where do you see this going? Us, I mean. I know we talked about taking it slow, but I'm curious what that looks like to you. Caleb had been thinking about this question for weeks, turning it over in his mind during long drives and quiet evenings. Honestly, I'm not sure. I haven't done this in so long, I don't really know what the steps are supposed to be anymore. I don't think there are supposed to be steps. Not set ones, anyway. Fair point. He turned his coffee cup in his hands. I know I want to keep seeing you. I know I think about you most of the time. Beyond that, I'm making it up as I go. That's honest. Is that okay? It's more than okay. I'm doing the same thing. She pulled her jacket tighter. I just want to make sure we're being realistic about what this means with Owen involved, with our lives being what they are. What do you mean? I mean, you live 30 minutes away in a cabin in the woods. I live here with a 12-year-old. You work alone. I work from home. Our lives don't naturally overlap very much. She looked at him. Eventually, that's going to be something we have to figure out. She was right, and Caleb had been avoiding thinking about it. Are you saying you don't think it can work? No, I'm saying I think it can, but only if we're both willing to make space for it. To actually build something instead of just letting it happen around the edges of our schedules. I want to build something. Do you? Because I need to know that, Caleb. I can't do halfway. Not with Owen watching. Not with how I feel about you. The directness of it hit him square in the chest. How do you feel about me? Mara held his gaze. Like this could be real. Like I could fall for you if I let myself. And that terrifies me because I haven't let myself feel that way about anyone since Brian left. Caleb set down his coffee and took her hand. I'm terrified too, but I'm here anyway. Promise me something. What? That if you change your mind, if this becomes too much or not what you want, you'll tell me. I can handle being hurt, but I can't handle being strung along. I promise. Say, same goes for you. She squeezed his hand. Deal. They went inside when the cold became unbearable, and Caleb reluctantly said he should head home to deal with the fallen tree. Mara walked him to his truck, and they stood in the driveway holding each other like they had all the time in the world. Thank you for last night, she said, for staying. Thank you for asking me to. Call me later? Count on it. The drive back to the cabin gave Caleb time to think. What Mara had said about their lives not naturally overlapping was true. He'd built a life around solitude, around not having to account for anyone else's needs or schedules. She'd built a life around Owen, around flexibility and independence. Merging those two things would require intention, compromise, effort. The question was whether he was ready for that. By the time he got home, he knew the answer. The next few weeks tested that answer in small ways. Caleb had a big commission, a custom dining set for a client in Aspen that required long hours and late nights. Mara had back-to-back deadlines that kept her glued to her computer. They still talked every day, still saw each other when they could, but the easy rhythm they'd found was harder to maintain. One Friday evening, Caleb was supposed to pick Mara up for dinner, but the client in Aspen called with changes that needed to be addressed immediately. He texted Mara from the workshop, covered in sawdust, frustrated and tired. I'm so sorry. Client crisis. Can we reschedule? Her response came quickly. Of course, everything okay? Just work stuff. I'll make it up to you. Don't worry about it. We'll figure something out. But the disappointment in those words was clear even through text, and Caleb felt it like a weight. This was exactly what Mara had been worried about, their lives happening around each other instead of with each other. He finished the client work by 9, but instead of going home, he drove to Mara's house. The lights were on, and through the window he could see her at the kitchen table working on her laptop. He knocked, and she looked up, surprised. Caleb? I thought you had to work. I finished. Can I come in? Of course. Owen was already in bed, and the house had that quiet end-of-day feeling. Mara closed her laptop, studying him. You didn't have to come all the way over here. I know you're exhausted. I wanted to see you. I hated canceling. It's fine, really. Work happens. It's not fine, though. You were right about what you said, about our lives not overlapping naturally. I don't want this to be something we fit in around the edges. Mara softened. I don't either, but I also know we both have responsibilities. I'm not expecting you to drop everything. I know, but I want you to know I'm trying, that this matters to me. She stood and wrapped her arms around him, and Caleb held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, feeling the tension drain from his shoulders. It matters to me too, she said quietly. More than I expected it to. They sat on the couch, Mara curled against him, talking about their weeks, about Owen's upcoming science fair, about the dining set Caleb was building. It was mundane, ordinary, exactly what he needed. Stay tonight, Mara said. I know it's late, but stay anyway. So he did, and in the morning he helped Owen make pancakes while Mara slept in, and it felt like a glimpse of something he hadn't known he wanted, this kind of domestic normalcy, this sense of being part of something larger than himself. But that glimpse came with complications. The following Tuesday, Caleb was at the hardware store when he ran into someone he hadn't seen in 3 years. Rachel, his ex-wife. She looked the same, polished, professional, her hair styled exactly the way she used to wear it. She was examining paint samples, and when she turned and saw him, her expression shifted through surprise to something more guarded. Caleb. Rachel, hi. They stood there awkwardly, the aisle suddenly too small. Other shoppers moved around them, oblivious. How are you? She asked. Good. I'm good. You? Fine. Busy. I'm living in Denver now, just up here for the weekend visiting a client. Denver. That's great. It is. I made senior partner last year. Congratulations. She studied him with the same analytical gaze he remembered. You look different. Happier, maybe. I am. Things are good. Are you seeing someone? The question caught him off guard. Yeah, actually, I am. Something flickered across Rachel's face, too quick to read. That's good. You deserve that. Thanks. You seen anyone? Not seriously. Work keeps me pretty occupied. She glanced at the samples in her hand. I should let you go. It was good seeing you, Caleb. You too. She walked away and Caleb stood there for a moment, processing. 3 years ago, running into Rachel would have wrecked him for days. Now he just felt a distant sadness for what they'd been, relief for what they weren't anymore. He texted Mara. Just ran into my ex-wife. Weird, but okay. Her response? Want to talk about it? Later, maybe. Just wanted you to know. I'm here when you're ready. That evening, Caleb told Mara about the encounter over dinner at her place. Owen was at a friend's house, and they had the rare luxury of uninterrupted time. How did it feel? Mara asked. Seeing her again? Strange. Like looking at a photograph of someone you used to know. There's recognition, but no real connection anymore. That's probably healthy. It is, but it also made me think about something. What? About how much I've changed. 3 years ago, I was so angry about the divorce, about feeling like I'd failed. Now I'm just grateful it ended when it did. Mara nodded slowly. I feel that way about Brian, not grateful exactly, but relieved that we didn't keep pretending. Do you ever worry about it? Caleb asked, about us making the same mistakes? Sometimes, but then I think about how different this feels. How easy you are to be with. She reached across the table for his hand. With Brian, everything was hard. Every conversation was a negotiation, every decision a battle. With you, it's just not. It's the same for me. Rachel and I were always fighting about something. What I should want, who I should be. With you, I don't feel like I have to perform or prove anything. Good, because I like you exactly as you are. The moment felt significant, another marker in whatever they were building. But before Caleb could respond, Mara's phone rang. She glanced at it, and her expression changed. It's my mom. I should take this. Of course. She answered, and Caleb watched her face shift from curiosity to concern to something close to fear. She stood, pacing to the window. When did this happen? A pause. Is she at the hospital now? Another pause, longer. Okay, I'll be there as soon as I can. Tell her I love her. She hung up, and when she turned to Caleb, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. My mom had a stroke. She's at the hospital in Boulder. My sister says she's stable, but they don't know how bad it is yet. Caleb was on his feet immediately. What do you need? I need to go there. Tonight. But Owen's at Jake's house until 9, and I have to pick him up, and I need to pack, and... She pressed her hands to her face. I don't know how to do all of this at once. Okay. Listen to me. Caleb kept his voice calm, steady. I'll pick up Owen. You pack. We'll figure out the rest. You don't have to. I want to. Give me Jake's address. For a moment, he thought she might argue, might insist on handling it herself. Instead, she just nodded and texted him the information. Caleb picked up Owen, who sensed immediately that something was wrong. In the truck, Caleb explained about Mara's mom, watched the kid process the information with that careful maturity he'd developed too young. Is Grandma going to be okay? Owen asked. I don't know, buddy, but your mom's going to go see her tonight. Should I go too? That's up to your mom, but either way, you're going to be okay. When they got back to the house, Mara had packed a bag and was on the phone with her sister, getting updates. She hung up when she saw Owen, pulled him into a hug. Hey, baby, did Caleb tell you? Yeah, can I come with you? Mara looked torn. I don't know if that's a good idea. The hospital's 3 hours away and you have school tomorrow. I don't care about school. That's Grandma. I know. Let me think about it, okay? She looked at Caleb over Owen's head, and he could see the impossible calculus she was running. What Owen needed versus what her mother needed versus what she could actually handle. I could stay here with him, Caleb offered, if you want. Keep him company, make sure he gets to school. Mara blinked. You'd do that? Of course. Mom, please, Owen said. Let Caleb stay. I'll be fine. Mara looked between them, and Caleb could see her weighing it, could see the vulnerability in accepting help this significant. Are you sure? She asked Caleb. Completely sure. She exhaled, nodded. Okay. Thank you. Both of you. She looked at Owen. You'll listen to Caleb? Do your homework? Get to bed on time? I promise. And you'll call me if you need anything? Mom, I'll be fine. She hugged him again, fierce and quick, then grabbed her bag. At the door, she turned to Caleb. I don't know how to thank you for this. You don't need to. Just focus on your mom. We'll be fine here. She kissed him quickly, then headed to her car. Caleb and Owen stood in the doorway, watching her pull away, taillights disappearing into the dark. So, Owen said, this is weird, right? A little bit, yeah. Want to order pizza? Caleb smiled. Definitely. They ordered pizza, and Owen showed Caleb his science fair project, a working model demonstrating how black holes bend light. The kid explained it with enthusiasm Caleb couldn't quite follow, but appreciated anyway. Your mom says you're really into astronomy, Caleb said. Yeah, I want to study it in college. Maybe work for NASA or something. That's a good goal. My dad thinks it's impractical, says I should study something more useful. Caleb chose his words carefully. What do you think? Owen shrugged. I think if I'm going to spend my whole life doing something, it should be something I actually care about. That's smart thinking. They watched a movie after dinner, some comedy Owen picked that was funnier than Caleb expected. Around 10, Owen started fading and Caleb suggested bed. The kid didn't argue, which told Caleb how worried he actually was about his grandmother. "Caleb," Owen said from his bedroom doorway, "thanks for staying. I know you didn't have to." "I wanted to. Your mom needed to be there, and I wanted to make sure you were okay. I am okay, but it's still nice having you here." After Owen was asleep, Caleb called Mara. She answered on the first ring. "How is she?" he asked. "Awake, talking, which is good. They think it was a minor stroke, but they're running tests to make sure." Her voice was thick with exhaustion. "How's Owen?" "Worried, but trying not to show it. We had pizza and watched a movie. He's asleep now." "Thank you for being there. I know this is a lot to ask." "You didn't ask, I offered. There's a difference." "Still, it means everything." They talked for a few more minutes, Mara filling him in on details, Caleb listening, offering what comfort he could through the phone. When they hung up, he sat on Mara's couch in the quiet house, thinking about how much his life had changed in 2 months. How he'd gone from carefully constructed solitude to this, sitting in someone else's living room at midnight, responsible for their child, worried about their mother, completely invested in their well-being. It should have terrified him. Instead, it felt right. Mara came home 2 days later, her mother stable and recovering. Caleb had kept Owen on schedule, school, homework, meals, and the kid had been surprisingly easy company. When Mara walked through the door Thursday afternoon, Owen ran to her, and she held him tight, eyes closed. "I missed you," she said into his hair. "Missed you too. How's Grandma?" "Better. She's going to be okay." Over Owen's shoulder, she met Caleb's eyes, and the gratitude there was so raw it made his chest ache. Later, after Owen was in his room doing homework, Mara and Caleb sat in the kitchen over coffee. "I can't thank you enough," Mara said, "for everything. Staying with Owen, keeping things normal for him. You didn't have to do any of that." "I know, but I wanted to." "Why?" "Because you needed it. Because Owen needed it. Because this is what people do when they care about each other." Mara's eyes filled with tears. "I was so scared, Caleb. Not just about my mom, but about falling apart, about Owen seeing me fall apart. And you just showed up, made it easier. That's what I'm here for." "Is it? Are you here for this? The hard stuff, the complicated family things, the emergencies at midnight?" Caleb reached for her hand. "Yeah, I am." "You're sure? Because this is my life. Single mom, aging parents, all the chaos that comes with it. If that's not what you signed up for..." "Mara, I'm sure." He pulled her close, and she came into his arms, finally letting herself lean on someone. "I'm not going anywhere." She cried then, quiet and brief, and Caleb just held her, understanding that sometimes the bravest thing was letting someone see you break. When she pulled back, wiping her eyes, she was almost smiling. "Owen told me you helped him with his science project." "I mostly just held things while he explained concepts I didn't understand." "He said you were really patient, that you actually listened instead of just pretending to." "He's a smart kid, easy to listen to." "He really likes you. He told me yesterday that he hoped you'd stick around." Caleb felt something shift in his chest. "What did you tell him?" "That I hoped so too." They sat together as the afternoon light faded, not talking, just being. And Caleb thought about all the ways love showed up, not just in the easy moments, the first kisses and quiet mornings, but in the hard ones too. In staying when things got complicated, in showing up when it would be easier to walk away, in choosing every single day to be present for someone else's life. He'd spent 3 years running from exactly this kind of intimacy, convinced it would only lead to more pain. Now he understood that the pain came from running, not from staying. "I should get going," he said eventually. "Let you rest." "Stay for dinner? Owen would love it." "You sure? You must be exhausted." "I am, but I want you here anyway." So he stayed. The weeks that followed Mara's mother's stroke brought a shift in their relationship that neither of them had explicitly discussed, but both felt acutely. Caleb found himself at Mara's house more nights than not, helping with dinner, talking with Owen about school projects, being present in ways that felt less like dating and more like building a life together. It was gradual, unspoken, but undeniable. December arrived with heavy snow and shortened days. Caleb finished the Aspen Commission and took on smaller local projects that didn't require the same brutal hours. He wanted the flexibility, though he didn't say it out loud. Wanted to be available when Mara needed him, when Owen had a basketball game, when life happened in all its unpredictable ways. One Saturday afternoon, Caleb was working in his shop when his phone rang. Marcus. "Hey man, what's up?" "So Sophie and I were talking," Marcus started, which never boded well. "We're doing Christmas Eve at our place this year. Just close friends, nothing huge. You should come. Bring Mara and Owen." Caleb set down his sanding block. "Christmas Eve is pretty serious, Marcus." "Exactly, which is why you should bring them. Come on, it's been 3 months. You're basically living together already." "We're not living together. You're there 5 nights a week." "That's different." "How?" Caleb didn't have a good answer for that. "Let me talk to Mara." "Do that. Sophie's already planning on them coming, by the way. She's making a seating chart. It's supposed to be casual." "You know Sophie." After they hung up, Caleb sat with the invitation, turning it over in his mind. Christmas Eve felt significant, a statement about where they were headed. He and Mara hadn't talked about the holidays yet, hadn't discussed what expectations looked like, or how to navigate Owen's schedule with his father. That evening, he brought it up over dinner at Mara's house. Owen was at the table too, working on math homework while they ate. "Marcus invited us to Christmas Eve at their place," Caleb said. "All 3 of us." Mara looked up from her pasta. "Really?" "Yeah, just a small thing with close friends. No pressure if that's too much." "Can I come?" Owen asked, not looking up from his homework. "That's kind of the point," Caleb said. "It would be all of us." Owen considered this. "Will there be good food?" "Sophie's cooking, so yes." "Then I'm in," Mara smiled. "Well, that was easy." She looked at Caleb. "What about Christmas Day? Owen's supposed to be with his dad." "I was thinking I'd just do my usual. Quiet day at the cabin. Maybe call my sister." "Your usual sounds lonely." "It's fine. I've done it the last 3 years." Mara set down her fork. "What if you came here instead? After Owen leaves in the morning, we could have breakfast, exchange one gift maybe. Nothing elaborate." The offer sat between them, weighted with meaning. Caleb had spent the last 3 Christmases determinedly alone, telling himself he preferred it that way. The idea of spending it with Mara, of building new traditions, felt both terrifying and necessary. "I'd like that," he said. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Owen looked between them. "Are you guys going to get all mushy now? Because I'm trying to eat." "Noted," Mara said, but she was smiling. The conversation shifted to other topics, but Caleb felt the decision settle in his chest. They were doing this, really doing this, building something that included holidays and traditions and futures. Later that week, Caleb drove into Denver for supplies and found himself in a jewelry store, looking at rings he had no business looking at. A saleswoman approached, friendly and professional. "Can I help you find something?" "Just browsing," Caleb said, but he couldn't stop staring at a simple silver band with a small diamond, elegant and understated. Exactly what Mara would like. "That's a lovely choice," the saleswoman said. "Are you shopping for someone special?" "Maybe. I don't know. It's complicated." She smiled knowingly. "It usually is." "How long have you been together?" 3 months? And you're already looking at rings?" Caleb stepped back from the counter. "You're right. This is crazy. Way too soon." "I didn't say that." "Sometimes you just know." "Do you?" "No, I mean?" The saleswoman tilted her head, studying him. "Only you can answer that. But if you're here, looking, then some part of you already has." Caleb left without buying anything, but the ring stayed in his mind. He wasn't ready to propose. That was ridiculous after 3 months. But the thought of eventually proposing, of asking Mara to build a permanent life with him, didn't feel ridiculous at all. Just inevitable. The realization should have panicked him. Instead, it felt like relief. Christmas Eve at Marcus and Sophie's house was exactly as advertised. Casual, warm, full of laughter, and good food. Sophie had gone all out despite claiming it would be low-key. The house decorated with white lights and pine garlands, jazz playing softly in the background. Owen attached himself to Marcus almost immediately, the two of them debating football teams with surprising intensity. "Your kid's opinionated," Marcus told Mara. "He gets it from me." Sophie pulled Mara into the kitchen, ostensibly to help with appetizers, but really to interrogate her about Caleb. Caleb could hear their voices, Sophie's enthusiasm, Mara's quieter responses. He felt oddly proud to be the subject of that conversation, to be someone worth discussing. "So this is serious," Marcus said, appearing at Caleb's elbow with a beer. "Getting there, yeah." "Sophie says Mara's crazy about you." "Did she?" "Also says you're an idiot if you let this one go." Caleb smiled. "Sophie's not subtle. She's not. Never has been, but she's usually right." Marcus took a long drink. "For what it's worth, I think you're good together. You seem lighter somehow, more yourself." "I feel that way." "Then don't overthink it. You've got a tendency to do that." Other friends arrived, couples Caleb vaguely knew from Marcus and Sophie's engagement party, friendly and curious about the woman who'd gotten the hermit carpenter to rejoin society. Mara handled it all with grace, comfortable in conversations, laughing at jokes, fitting in seamlessly. Owen made friends with another kid there, the two of them disappearing upstairs to play video games. At one point, Caleb found Mara on the back porch, taking a break from the crowd. The night was cold and clear, stars sharp overhead. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, just needed a minute. Sophie's friends are lovely, but intense." "That's one way to put it." She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arms around her from behind, both of them looking out at the snow-covered yard. "Thank you for bringing us tonight," Mara said. "Owen's having a great time. He and Marcus are debating whether to watch the game tomorrow." "Owen would love that. His dad usually just puts on whatever he wants to watch." Caleb heard the edge in her voice. "How's that going? The co-parenting thing?" "It's fine. Brian's Brian. Reliable when it's convenient, absent when it's not." She turned to face him. "But that's not your problem." "It kind of is, though, if we're doing this for real." "Are we? Doing this for real?" "Aren't we?" Mara studied his face in the porch light. "I want to be. But I need to know you're ready for what that means. Owen's part of the package, and his dad's going to be part of our lives whether we like it or not. Can you handle that?" "Yes." "You say that now, but Mara, I've thought about this a lot. I know what I'm signing up for." "Do you?" "Because it's messy. Co-parenting schedules, ex-husband drama, a kid who's going to test boundaries and push buttons. It's not romantic." "I don't need romantic. I need real. And this feels real." She kissed him then, soft and certain, and when they pulled apart, she was smiling. "Okay, good. Just making sure we're on the same page." They went back inside to find Owen and Marcus had recruited others into their football debate. The living room divided into opposing camps. Sophie caught Mara's eye and mouthed, "Told you," with obvious satisfaction. The evening stretched into night, easy and comfortable, and when they finally left around 11, Owen was half asleep in the back seat. "That was fun," he mumbled. "Can we do it again?" "We'll see," Mara said, but she was smiling. Caleb drove them home, the roads quiet and snow-dusted, Christmas lights still glowing in windows they passed. At Mara's house, he carried a sleeping Owen inside while Mara unlocked the door, the domesticity of it striking him again. This could be his life. This could be every night. After Owen was in bed, Mara made tea and they sat on the couch, both too wired to sleep despite the late hour. "I got you something," Caleb said, "for Christmas, but I wasn't sure if we were doing gifts." "I got you something too. Should we do them now or wait until morning?" "Now. I'm not patient enough to wait." Mara laughed and retrieved a wrapped box from the closet. Caleb had left his gift in the truck, so he ran out to get it, coming back with a small package wrapped in simple brown paper. "You first," Mara said, handing him the box. Inside was a wooden case, handcrafted and beautiful, with his initials carved into the lid. He opened it to find a complete set of Japanese chisels, the kind he'd been wanting for years but could never justify buying. "Mara, these are expensive. You're always talking about wanting to try different techniques. I figured you needed the right tools." "This is incredible. Thank you." Open the case again. Look inside the lid. He did, finding an inscription burned into the wood. For building beautiful things. M. Caleb felt his throat tighten. This is perfect. Your turn. He handed her the package, suddenly nervous. Inside was a leather portfolio for her design work, custom made by a craftsman he knew in Aspen. Her initials were embossed on the front, and inside were sections for her tablet, sketches, client materials. Caleb, she breathed, this is beautiful. I noticed your old one was falling apart. This is too nice for work. Nothing's too nice for work you care about. She ran her fingers over the leather, then looked at him with eyes that were suspiciously bright. How did you know exactly what I needed? I pay attention. She set the portfolio aside and kissed him, deeper this time, pulling him close. When they finally broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. Stay tonight, she said. It's Christmas Eve, stay. Owen, we'll be fine. He knows you're here sometimes. Stay. So he did, and in the morning Owen found them on the couch again, tangled under a blanket, and just rolled his eyes before heading to the kitchen for cereal. Christmas morning was chaotic in the best way. Owen tore through presents while Mara made coffee, and Caleb sat on the floor helping with assembly of some complicated science kit. Brian showed up at 10 to pick up Owen, and the interaction was brief but telling. Brian was polished and professional, friendly but distant, and Caleb could see immediately why the marriage had failed. The man was there but not present, going through motions without real investment. Have fun with your dad, Mara told Owen, hugging him tight. I will. See you tomorrow, Caleb. If your mom wants me around. She does, obviously. After they left, the house felt suddenly quiet. Mara stood at the window watching them drive away, and Caleb came up behind her. You okay? Yeah, it's just weird watching him go. Every time I worry, he'll come back different somehow. He'll be fine. Brian might not be the greatest, but he's not going to hurt him. I know. I just worry. They spent the rest of Christmas Day exactly as Mara had planned. Breakfast at noon, old movies on TV, the easy companionship of people who didn't need constant entertainment. At some point, Caleb dozed off on the couch, and when he woke, Mara was reading beside him, her hand resting on his arm. Sorry, he said. Didn't mean to fall asleep. Don't apologize. You looked peaceful. What time is it? Almost 4. We should think about dinner. They made pasta together, moving around the kitchen like they'd been doing this for years, and Caleb thought about what Marcus had said, about him seeming lighter, more himself. It was true. With Mara, he didn't have to be anything other than exactly who he was. Over dinner, Mara brought up something that had clearly been on her mind. I've been thinking about us, she said, about where this is going. Caleb's stomach tightened. Okay. I'm not trying to pressure you or force some timeline, but I need to know what you're thinking, long term, I mean. What do you want to know? Do you see this lasting? Do you see yourself with me and Owen a year from now, 5 years from now? The questions were direct, almost blunt, but Caleb appreciated the honesty. Yeah, I do. Really? Really? I'm not great at this, talking about feelings, making big declarations, but I can't imagine not being with you. Mara set down her fork. I feel the same way, which is terrifying because I swore I wouldn't do this again. Wouldn't let myself fall for someone, wouldn't risk it. And now? Now I think I already fell, past tense. Caleb reached across the table for her hand. Me too. So what do we do about it? What do you want to do? I want to stop being cautious, stop waiting for it to fall apart. Just be together. Actually, together. Like living together? Mara looked startled. I wasn't necessarily suggesting, I mean, if you wanted to, eventually, but I wasn't. Mara, breathe. I'm asking what you meant. She laughed nervously. I don't know exactly. I just know I'm tired of you driving back and forth to the cabin, tired of coordinating schedules, tired of this feeling temporary when it doesn't feel temporary at all. Caleb had been thinking the same thing for weeks but hadn't known how to bring it up. What if we tried something? Not moving in necessarily, but maybe I stay here more often. Keep some things here so I'm not constantly packing bags. Would you want that? Yeah, I would. What about your cabin? I'm not getting rid of it, but I don't have to live there all the time. I can work from anywhere. Mara's eyes were bright. Are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured. I'm sure. This makes sense. We make sense. She came around the table and sat in his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. This is really happening, isn't it? Yeah, it really is. They sat like that for a long time, holding each other, and Caleb felt the last piece of his resistance dissolve. He'd spent 3 years building walls, convincing himself that isolation was safety. Mara had quietly, patiently dismantled every single one. The next week, Caleb started bringing things over. Clothes first, then tools, then personal items that made Mara's house feel like shared space. Owen watched the gradual accumulation with interest but no objection. Does this mean you live here now? He asked one evening. Caleb looked at Mara, who looked back at him. Something like that, Caleb said. Is that okay with you? Owen shrugged. Yeah, it's cool. Just don't mess with the thermostat. Mom has a whole thing about it. Noted. But the transition wasn't without complications. One Saturday, Caleb was working in the garage when Brian showed up unannounced to drop off Owen early. He found Caleb first, working on a chair repair. Who are you? Brian asked, not hostile but clearly surprised. Caleb Reed, I'm the boyfriend. Right. Owen mentioned you. They shook hands and Caleb could feel Brian sizing him up, making assessments. Mara inside? Brian asked. Yeah, I'll let her know you're here. Don't bother, I'll find her. Brian walked into the house like he still lived there, and Caleb felt a flash of irritation. This was Mara's space now, not theirs. But he stayed in the garage, giving them privacy, hearing raised voices after a few minutes. When Brian left 10 minutes later, he didn't acknowledge Caleb, just got in his car and drove off. Caleb found Mara in the kitchen, arms crossed, jaw tight. What happened? He's mad I'm seeing someone. Said I should have told him, that it's confusing for Owen. Owen seems fine with it. That's what I said, but Brian thinks he gets an opinion on my personal life because we have a kid together. Does he? Not like this. Not showing up and making demands. She exhaled hard. I'm sorry you had to hear that. It's fine, but you need to set boundaries with him. I know, I will. She looked at Caleb. This doesn't change anything, right? With us? No, but I need to know something. What? Are you over him completely? Mara looked shocked. Yes, absolutely. I was over him before the divorce was final. Then don't let him make you doubt this. Don't let him have that power. She nodded, and Caleb pulled her close, feeling her tension gradually ease. The incident with Brian forced conversations they'd been avoiding. About boundaries, about Owen's needs, about what their future actually looked like. They talked late into the night, working through scenarios and concerns, building a framework for how to handle the complications of blended families and ex-spouses. I don't want this to be harder than it needs to be, Mara said at one point, but I also won't let Brian dictate how I live my life. Good, you shouldn't. Do you really think we can make this work? With all the complications? Caleb thought about the ring he'd seen in Denver, still sitting in his mind like a promise. Yeah, I do. Why? Because we choose it. Every day we choose this. That's enough. Mara leaned against him and Caleb held her, thinking about all the ways love required courage. Not just the courage to begin, but the courage to continue. To keep choosing despite complications, despite fear, despite all the reasons it would be easier to walk away. He wasn't walking away. He was building a life here, one careful decision at a time. And for the first time in years, that didn't feel like settling or compromising or giving up anything important. It felt like finally, after so long, coming home. January arrived with bitter cold and the kind of clarity that only came with new beginnings. Caleb had been staying at Mara's house more nights than not, his cabin becoming a place he visited rather than lived, and the shift felt natural in ways he hadn't anticipated. But beneath the ease of their daily routine, questions lingered. Questions about permanence, about commitment, about whether what they were building could withstand the weight of real life. The answer came on a Tuesday afternoon when everything fell apart at once. Caleb was in the garage working on a commission when his phone rang. An unknown Denver number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. "Is this Caleb Reed?" "Speaking." "This is Jennifer Hartwell from Apex Design Group. We're a high-end furniture company based in Denver, and we came across your work through a client recommendation. We'd like to discuss a potential partnership opportunity." Caleb set down his chisel. "What kind of partnership?" "We're looking to collaborate with craftsmen who produce unique custom pieces. It would mean steady contracts, significant exposure, and honestly, substantial income. But it would require relocating to Denver and working from our design studio." The offer was everything he would have wanted 5 years ago. Financial security, professional recognition, the kind of opportunity that didn't come twice. But now, standing in Mara's garage with her house just steps away, the thought of leaving felt impossible. "Can I think about it?" he asked. "Of course, we'd love to meet with you next week if you're available, just to discuss details, no pressure." After hanging up, Caleb sat there for a long time, trying to process. This was the kind of break that could change his career, set him up for the future. But it would mean leaving Mara, leaving Owen, leaving the life they were building together. Could he ask them to come with him? Should he? He was still sitting there when Mara came home from picking up Owen from school. She found him in the garage, immediately sensing something was wrong. "What happened?" He told her about the call, watching her face carefully for reactions. She listened without interrupting, and when he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That's amazing, Caleb. That's exactly the kind of opportunity you deserve." "But it's in Denver." "I know." "I don't know what to do." Mara sat on the workbench beside him. "Do you want to do it? Honestly?" "A month ago, I would have said yes immediately. Now I don't know. Everything I want is here." "You mean us?" "I mean you and Owen, yeah. But also this life we're building. I can't just walk away from that." "You're not walking away. You're considering a career opportunity. Those are different things." Caleb looked at her. "Are they?" "Because it feels like a choice. Denver or you. It doesn't have to be." "What does that mean?" Before Mara could answer, Owen appeared in the doorway. "Mom, I need help with my science project. The Mars rover keeps falling apart." "Give us a minute, honey." "It's fine," Caleb said, standing. "I should head to the cabin anyway. Check on things." He left before Mara could object, needing space to think. The drive to the cabin was familiar and automatic, and when he pulled up to the small structure he'd restored with his own hands, it felt like visiting a memory. Inside, everything was exactly as he'd left it, clean, ordered, lonely. Ranger greeted him with enthusiasm, and Caleb took him for a long walk through the snow-covered woods, trying to work through the impossible equation in his head. Stay with Mara and keep his small, comfortable business, or take the Denver opportunity and risk losing everything that mattered. His phone buzzed. "Mara, we should talk about this, really talk." He texted back, "I know. Tomorrow? Come for dinner. We'll figure it out." That night, alone in the cabin for the first time in weeks, Caleb couldn't sleep. He lay awake staring at the ceiling, Ranger snoring at the foot of the bed, and thought about paths not taken, about Rachel and corporate jobs and the life he'd deliberately walked away from, about whether he was making the same mistake again, choosing isolation over opportunity. But this wasn't the same. Mara wasn't Rachel. She wasn't asking him to be someone he wasn't. She was asking him to figure out what he actually wanted. The question was whether he was brave enough to choose it. The next evening, Caleb showed up at Mara's house with wine and a knot of anxiety in his chest. Owen was at basketball practice, which meant they had time to actually talk without interruption. Mara had made pasta, and they sat at the kitchen table picking at food neither of them really wanted. "I met with my boss today," Mara said finally. "Well, my main client, Ain, the one who gives me most of my work." "Okay." "I asked about going fully remote, like work from anywhere remote instead of work from home." Caleb set down his fork. "Why?" "Because I've been thinking about Denver, about what it would mean if you took that job." Let me finish. "I can do my work from anywhere with internet. Owen's in middle school, which isn't ideal for moving, but it's not impossible either. Denver has good schools, and he'd adapt." She met his eyes. "What I'm saying is, if you want to take that job, we could make it work." "You'd move to Denver? With Owen?" "If that's what you wanted, if that's what you needed for your career." Caleb felt his chest constrict. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking, I'm offering. But your whole life is here. Your mom, your friends, Owen's school. My mom is in Boulder, which is closer to Denver than here. My friends will visit, and Owen's adaptable. She reached across the table for his hand. The question isn't whether we can make it work. The question is what you actually want. I want to be with you. I know. But do you want Denver? The partnership, the studio, all of it? Caleb thought about it honestly. Part of me does. The part that still worries about financial security, about building something sustainable. But the rest of me knows I'd be miserable in a design studio, working on other people's visions instead of my own. So don't take it. But what if I regret it? What if I'm giving up too much? Mara squeezed his hand. You're not giving up anything. You're choosing what matters more. And if what matters more is building furniture in a garage and coming home to us every night, then that's not settling. That's knowing yourself. When did you get so wise? I had a lot of therapy after my divorce. Caleb laughed despite himself. I should probably get some of that. Probably. But in the meantime, what are you going to tell them? He took a breath, feeling the answer settle into certainty. I'm going to say no, not because I have to, but because I want to. Because this life, here with you, is the one I actually want to live. Mara's eyes filled with tears. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. She came around the table and kissed him, and it felt like a promise being made and kept simultaneously. When they pulled apart, she was smiling through tears. Okay, good. That's really good. There's something else I want to talk about, though. What? Caleb had been rehearsing this for weeks, but now that the moment was here, the words felt inadequate. I've been thinking about us, about what we're building, and I don't want it to be temporary anymore. It's not temporary, Caleb. We've been together 6 months. I know, but I want it to be permanent, official. He stopped, frustrated with his inability to articulate it properly. I want to marry you, Mara. Eventually. When you're ready. If you're ready. I just need you to know that's where my head is. Mara stared at him, and for a terrifying moment Caleb thought he'd miscalculated everything. Then she started crying in earnest, laughing at the same time. Are you asking me to marry you right now? No, maybe. I don't know. I don't have a ring or a plan. I just needed you to know. That's the worst proposal I've ever heard. It's not a proposal. It's a declaration of intent. That's even worse. I know. I'm terrible at this. She kissed him again, harder this time. I want that too. The permanent thing, the official thing, all of it. Yeah? Yeah? But can we do it properly, like when you actually have a ring and maybe some idea of what you're going to say? I can do that. Good. Because Owen's going to want details, and declaration of intent isn't going to cut it. They heard the front door open, Owen calling out that he was home. Mara quickly wiped her eyes, and they both stood up trying to look normal. Owen appeared in the kitchen, sweaty from practice, immediately suspicious. What's going on? You both look weird. Nothing, Mara said too quickly. We're fine, Caleb added, which didn't help. Owen looked between them. Did you guys have a fight? No, Mara said. Actually, we were just talking about the future, about us staying here instead of moving to Denver. We were going to move to Denver? We're not. That's the point. Owen processed this, then shrugged. Okay, cool. Can I have a snack? After he left with a sandwich, Mara and Caleb looked at each other and started laughing. That went well, Caleb said. He's 12, nothing phases him. But later that night, after Owen was in bed, the kid appeared in the living room where Caleb and Mara were watching a movie. Can I ask you something? Owen said to Caleb. Sure. Are you going to marry my mom? Caleb glanced at Mara, who looked equally surprised. Would that be okay with you if I did? Owen thought about it seriously. Yeah, I think so. You're pretty cool, and you make her happy. She makes me happy too. Plus, you're good at fixing things, and you actually listen when I talk about space stuff. Those are important qualifications. Owen smiled. Just don't be weird about it, okay? My friend's mom got remarried, and her new stepdad tries way too hard. I'll keep that in mind. Okay, night. He went back to his room, leaving Caleb and Mara staring at each other. Well, Mara said, I guess we have his blessing? Apparently my repair skills sealed the deal. Don't sell yourself short. The space stuff helped too. The next week, Caleb called the Denver company and politely declined their offer. The woman on the phone was disappointed but professional, and when he hung up, Caleb felt nothing but relief. He'd made the right choice. Not the easy one, maybe, but the right one. He spent the day working on a new commission, and when Mara came home from a client meeting, he was covered in sawdust and completely content. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Good. I called Denver, told them no." "How do you feel?" "Like I dodged a bullet." She smiled. "Good. Because I have news too." "What?" "My client loved my pitch. They're expanding the contract, which means more work and more income. And it's all remote, so I can do it from anywhere." "That's amazing." "It is, but there's more." She set down her bag and pulled out her laptop. "I've been thinking about your cabin, about how much you love it, but how you're never there anymore." "Yeah. What if we didn't have to choose? What if we made this house our primary place, but kept the cabin for weekends, for when you need quiet to work on special projects?" Caleb hadn't considered that. "You'd be okay with that?" "More than okay. I think Owen would love having a place to escape to sometimes. And honestly, I like the idea of having both. The community here and the solitude there." It was perfect, and Caleb wondered why he hadn't thought of it himself. "That could really work." "I think it could. We'd have to figure out logistics, but yeah, I think it could." They spent that evening planning, mapping out how to balance two places, how to make sure Owen stayed rooted while giving Caleb the space he needed for his work. It felt less like compromise and more like expansion, taking the best of both their lives and weaving them together. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning in early February, Caleb drove into Denver. Not for the job he'd turned down, but for something else entirely. He found the jewelry store he'd visited before Christmas and asked to see the ring that had stayed in his mind. The same saleswoman helped him, smiling in recognition. "You came back." "I did." "You're sure this time?" "Completely sure." He bought the ring, and the saleswoman congratulated him, wished him luck. On the drive home, Caleb kept glancing at the small box on the passenger seat, still not quite believing he was doing this. He'd spent 3 years convinced he'd never want this again, and now here he was, planning a proposal. He wanted to do it right, not rushed or improvised, but intentional and meaningful. He enlisted Marcus and Sophie for help, which led to an afternoon of planning that somehow became more complicated than necessary. "It should be romantic," Sophie insisted, "somewhere special to both of you." "The lake," Marcus suggested, "where you first met." Caleb considered that. "Maybe, but I want it to feel natural, not staged." "All proposals are staged," Sophie said. "That's the point." "Still, I want it to feel like us." They settled on a plan that was simple but meaningful, and Caleb spent the next week waiting for the right moment. He carried the ring with him constantly, checking his pocket to make sure it was still there, rehearsing what he wanted to say. The moment came on a Thursday evening. Mara had mentioned wanting to go back to the trail where they'd had their second date, said something about needing fresh air and perspective. Caleb suggested they go that afternoon, just the two of them, and she agreed easily. They hiked in comfortable silence, the late February day cold but clear. Snow still clinging to shadows but melting in the sun. When they reached the clearing with the view of the lake, they stopped like they had that first time. "I've been thinking," Mara said, looking out at the water, "about how different my life is now compared to a year ago. How much better it is." "Mine too. I almost didn't go to that coffee shop, you know. Almost canceled at the last minute. I almost didn't show up either." She turned to look at him. "But you did. We both did. Best decision I ever made." "Same." Caleb's heart was pounding. This was it. This was the moment. "Mara, can I ask you something?" "Always." He pulled out the ring box and her eyes went wide. "I know I said I'd do this properly, with a plan and the right words, but standing here, where we had our second date, where we really started building this thing between us, it feels right. It feels like exactly where we're supposed to be." "Caleb, I'm not good at speeches, but I'm good at showing up, at being present, at choosing you every single day. and I want to keep doing that for the rest of my life. He opened the box, the simple silver ring catching the light. Will you marry me? Mara was crying, smiling, nodding all at once. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly. She looked at it, then at him, then pulled him into a kiss that felt like every good thing he'd ever hoped for. I love you, she said when they finally pulled apart. I love you too. They stood there holding each other, the lake stretching out below them, the mountains rising beyond, and Caleb thought about all the almost that had led them here. The coffee date he almost skipped, the walk he almost canceled, the life he almost chose over this one. We should tell Owen, Mara said. How do you think he'll react? He'll probably ask if he has to wear a suit to the wedding. Does he? Absolutely not. They hiked back to the car holding hands, and Mara kept looking at the ring, smiling every time she did. When they got back to the house, Owen was home from school, working on homework at the kitchen table. Hey, he said without looking up. How was the hike? Good, Mara said. Actually, really good. We have something to tell you. Owen looked up, saw their expressions, then saw the ring on his mother's finger. Oh, wow, you actually did it. I did, Caleb said. Is that okay? Owen stood up and walked over to them. He looked at Caleb seriously. Are you going to be a good stepdad? I'm going to try. Are you going to try to replace my real dad? No, never. Are you going to keep making my mom happy? That's the plan. Owen nodded slowly. Okay then. I'm cool with it. He looked at Mara. Can I tell Jake? He's going to flip. Go ahead. Owen ran upstairs, already pulling out his phone, and Mara turned to Caleb, laughing. Well, that was anticlimactic. Were you expecting something different? I don't know. Maybe more emotion? He's 12. He'll process it later. They were right. That night, Owen came into the living room where they were sitting and hugged Mara out of nowhere. I'm really happy for you, Mom, he said quietly. Thanks, baby. He looked at Caleb. You too. I'm happy for you too. Thank you, Owen. That means a lot. The wedding planning happened gradually over the spring. They kept it simple, close friends and family, an outdoor ceremony by the lake, nothing elaborate or expensive. Mara's mother, fully recovered from her stroke, cried happy tears when they told her. Caleb's sister flew in from California, thrilled to finally meet the woman who'd gotten her brother to rejoin the world. Marcus and Sophie threw them an engagement party that was supposedly small, but ended up being 30 people. Brian sent a brief congratulatory text that was professional and distant, which was probably the best they could hope for. Through it all, Caleb and Mara kept building their life together. He split his time between the house and the cabin, finding that the rhythm worked perfectly for his work. Mara's remote contracts flourished, and she started taking on more creative projects that excited her. Owen got accepted into a summer astronomy program he'd been hoping for. Small moments of ordinary happiness stacked into something extraordinary. The wedding was in June, on a Saturday afternoon when the mountains were green and the lake was calm. Mara wore a simple white dress, and Caleb wore a suit that Sophie had insisted on, and Owen stood beside them looking uncomfortable but proud. When it came time for vows, Caleb spoke from the heart instead of from notes. I spent a long time thinking I knew what I wanted from life. Quiet, simplicity, safety. But what I really wanted was someone who made me want to be brave enough to want more. Mara, you showed me that love doesn't have to be complicated or painful. It can be this, easy and steady and real. I choose you today, and I'll choose you every day after. Mara's vows were equally simple. Caleb, you showed up when I didn't think anyone would. You stayed when it got hard. You loved not just me, but my son, my whole messy, complicated life. You made me believe in partnership again, in building something together. I choose you, today and always. Marcus was right. Sophie cried through the entire ceremony. So did Mara's mother. So did Caleb's sister. Even Owen got misty-eyed, though he'd deny it later. The reception was exactly what they wanted. Good food, good music, good people. Caleb danced with Mara as the sun set over the lake, and he thought about the text message he'd almost deleted, the coffee date he'd almost skipped, all the almosts that had led to this perfect, imperfect moment. What are you thinking? Mara asked. her head on his shoulder. That I'm the luckiest man alive. Sappy. True, though. I know. She looked up at him. I love you, husband. I love you too, wife. They danced until the stars came out, surrounded by people who loved them, building a memory they'd return to for years. And when the night ended and they drove home together, to their house, their life, their future, Caleb felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was real. Not because there wouldn't be challenges or complications, but because they'd face them together. Not because love was easy, but because they'd both learned it was worth the effort. 2 months later, Mara got an offer for a major design contract that would require travel. A year ago, she might have turned it down, worried about leaving Owen, about disrupting their routine. Instead, she talked to Caleb and they figured it out together. He'd adjust his schedule, Owen would stay with him when Mara traveled, they'd make it work. Because that's what partnerships were, not perfect balance, but constant adjustment. Not avoiding problems, but solving them together. One evening in late summer, Caleb was working in the garage when Owen appeared with his telescope. Can you help me set this up? Owen asked. There's supposed to be a meteor shower tonight. Sure. Where do you want to watch from? The cabin? Less light pollution out there. So they packed up the truck and drove out to the cabin, Mara joining them with blankets and thermoses of hot chocolate. They set up the telescope in the clearing behind the cabin, and as darkness fell, they watched the sky together. There, Owen said, pointing. Did you see that one? I missed it, Mara said. There'll be more. Just wait. They waited, the three of them, and the meteors came in streaks of light across the darkness. Caleb sat with his arm around Mara, Owen beside them explaining the science of it all, and he thought about how far they'd all come. From a blind date meant as a joke to this, a family, real and chosen and permanent. Make a wish, Mara whispered as another meteor streaked past. But Caleb didn't need to wish for anything. Everything he wanted was already here, sitting beside him under the stars, building a life one small moment at a time. The meteor shower lasted for hours, and they watched until Owen finally fell asleep on the blanket between them. Caleb carried him inside while Mara cleaned up, and they tucked him into the cabin's guest room. He's happy, Mara said quietly, looking at their sleeping son. Really happy. So am I. Me too. They stood there for a moment, two people who'd almost given up on love, who'd almost settled for loneliness, who'd almost missed each other entirely. But they hadn't. They'd shown up, taken the risk, built something worth keeping, and that made all the difference. Outside, the meteors continued their ancient journey across the sky, indifferent to the small human dramas below. But inside the cabin, three people slept peacefully, bound together by choice and love and the simple courage it took to try again. Sometimes, Caleb thought as he drifted off to sleep, the best things in life were the ones you almost ignored, the invitations you almost declined, the chances you almost didn't take, the love you almost let slip away. He was glad he'd answered that text message. He was glad he'd shown up. He was glad for every single choice that had led him here, to this moment, to this life, to this woman sleeping beside him, and the boy in the next room who called him family. It wasn't the life he'd planned. It was better. And as sleep finally claimed him, Caleb Reed smiled, knowing that tomorrow he'd wake up and choose it all over again. Because that's what love was. Not a feeling that happened to you, but a decision you made every single day. And he'd keep making it for the rest of his life.